Imagine the Ice Age, a world without maps or roads. How did humans navigate this vast wilderness? A snowstorm rages. A familiar mountain, once a guide, vanishes into the swirling white. Their footsteps are erased. The frozen river, once a path, is now an unrecognizable surface. How could they navigate when the very landscape itself seemed to constantly change its face? Getting lost in the Ice Age was not merely an inconvenience, it was a matter of life and death. A wrong turn could separate you permanently from your life-sustaining camp. Without proper navigation, access to vital food sources would quickly become impossible. Finding fresh water in a vast, frozen landscape depended entirely on knowing your route. Fire, the ultimate survival tool, was only possible if you could reach fuel and shelter. Secure shelter from the harsh elements was non-negotiable for prolonged survival. To be separated from family meant almost certain doom for individuals and groups. Safe river crossings or mountain passes were crucial, avoiding perilous dead ends. Seasonal resources like migrating herds or berry patches demanded precise timing and direction. Extra distance meant prolonged cold exposure, dramatically increasing risk to life. Unplanned detours rapidly depleted energy reserves, leading to severe hunger and weakness. Fatigue compounded every challenge, dulling senses and making decisions much harder. Every wrong turn or delay increased exposure to predators and unseen environmental dangers. Prehistoric people did not simply wander aimlessly. Their movements were often purposeful. Which path offers a safer passage? One faster, one more certain. Speed versus safety. How did they weigh these choices, knowing the stakes were so incredibly high? One primary method of navigation was reading the landscape itself, like a living map. Travelers would meticulously memorize the shapes and contours of mountain ranges. Distinctive split rocks or unusual boulders served as unmistakable fixed points. The unique bends and curves of a river provided continuous directional cues. Towering cliffs, offering clear boundaries, helped orient movements across an open land. Waterfalls were not only water sources but also memorable, audible landmarks. The entrances to caves often marked secure shelter points or resource locations. A lone, distinctive tree could be a powerful visual beacon for miles. Valleys naturally channeled movement, offering protection from wind and clear paths. Coastlines provided an unmistakable boundary, useful for large-scale orientation. Islands, too, could serve as fixed points in larger bodies of water. Subtle changes in soil composition or types of vegetation also served as local markers. Navigation often formed a chain, from a familiar camp to an unusual rock formation. From that rock, one might follow the winding river bend, noting its unique features. The river bend would then lead into a narrow, recognizable valley, a protected passageway. Finally, the valley would open, revealing a distant, familiar ridge, guiding them further. However, these landmarks were not always reliable. Fog could erase them entirely. A heavy snowstorm could transform familiar mountains into featureless white mounds. The shroud of darkness rendered even the most prominent features invisible. Seasonal floods might dramatically alter riverbanks, confusing any established route. Even new vegetation growth could obscure well-known paths or smaller landmarks. In these conditions, travelers relied on an internal map, shaped by memory and instinct. Major landscape features like rivers, ridges, and coastlines were essential for sustained direction. Rivers provided a constant source of life-sustaining fresh water, a crucial draw. They often carved out natural valleys, offering protected routes through tough terrain. The lush vegetation along riverbanks offered forage, wood, and other valuable resources. Known river crossings were critical navigation points, avoiding deeper, impassable sections. Recognizable bends and turns along a river's course served as clear sequential markers. Ridges, by contrast, offered vastly wider views, allowing for broader landscape assessment. However, these elevated positions often exposed travelers to greater wind and cold. The lack of cover on ridges meant constant exposure to sun, rain, or snow. Coastlines provided an unmistakable, linear boundary, hard to lose sight of. Yet, tidal changes could dramatically alter the usable walking space along the shore. Impassable cliffs often forced detours inland, complicating direct coastal travel. Every major feature served its purpose, yet each came with inherent navigational challenges. A river might offer a clear path but could lead to dangerous rapids or blockages. A ridge provided excellent views but could also be a trap in harsh weather conditions. Coastlines were easy to follow but might be cut off by sudden, high tides or rockfalls. Each offered distinct advantages and disadvantages. No single feature was foolproof. The art was to combine these observations, building a coherent, mental picture of the world. Beyond fixed landmarks, ancient navigators keenly observed the sky and atmosphere. The position of sunrise and sunset provided fundamental directional cues. Shadow direction, changing throughout the day, offered a natural clock and compass. Prevailing winds, often consistent over regions, could signal general direction. Observing the movement and buildup of storm systems indicated changing weather patterns. The subtle shapes of snowdrifts, molded by consistent winds, could point a way. Cloud formations, their type and movement, hinted at distant and local weather shifts. Temperature changes, felt through the skin, indicated elevation, moisture, or approaching weather. These natural clues were not precise modern instruments, but invaluable guides. A single clue might fail, the sun could be hidden by clouds, or wind might shift. But several clues, when combined, offered a far more reliable, integrated picture. The sun's journey provided the most consistent, universal indicator of direction. A river's flow always moved downstream, a clear and unambiguous vector. Wind, though variable, often held general patterns tied to seasonal shifts. Cloud types and movements, from gentle wisps to heavy storm fronts, signaled changes. Would you trust the distant sun, the steady flow of a river, or a memory of the route? The sun remained a constant, but its visibility was always dependent on the sky. A river offered a continuous line, but its course could be misleading or dangerous. Perhaps the most trusted guide was an elder, one who remembered the route vividly. The combination of personal observation and shared experience was truly invaluable. Animals, too, served as moving information, subtle guides across the vast wilderness. Tracks often led to vital water sources, hidden streams, or melting snow. Where animals congregated for feeding, there would be abundant forage for them. Migration routes, worn over generations, indicated predictable seasonal movements. Animal trails often followed the most passable terrain, avoiding steep cliffs or swamps. The presence and behavior of certain animals could signal seasonal changes. Fresh predator tracks were an urgent warning of nearby danger, demanding caution. However, animal trails were not guaranteed human roads, often leading into unsuitable spots. They might lead to dense undergrowth or thorny thickets, impassable for humans. Many animal paths ended abruptly at sheer cliffs, posing a deadly hazard for people. Following certain tracks could lead directly to dangerous predators or their lairs. Even trails to water sources might lead to treacherous currents or uncrossable rivers. Human judgment remained paramount. Tracks were clues, not definitive maps to follow. They had to interpret and decide, combining animal signs with their own observations. The knowledge gleaned from animals was an integral piece of the larger navigation puzzle. Experienced travelers understood which animal paths offered a higher chance of success. Constant vigilance for movement, sounds, or other signs was always key to their safety. Every piece of information, even from animals, required careful consideration and analysis. Ultimately, the decision to follow or detour rested squarely on human intelligence. Their choices, based on these observations, determined their fate in the wild. Memory was the ultimate map, held not on parchment, but within the human mind itself. Travelers memorized precise distances between crucial water sources along their routes. They recalled every dangerous river crossing, every treacherous mountain pass. The locations of seasonal camps, used year after year, were etched into their memories. Intricate patterns of snow accumulation and ice formation were carefully noted and recalled. The whereabouts of fuel sources, specific groves or dried wood deposits, were vital. Known animal gathering areas, for hunting or observation, were crucial points. They accurately estimated journey durations, anticipating travel times between locations. Views from different directions along a route were also committed to deep memory. Stories, passed down through generations, encoded crucial navigational knowledge. Oral warnings about treacherous areas or seasonal dangers were vital for survival. Place names, often descriptive, helped identify specific points in the landscape. Repeated journeys solidified these mental maps, making routes instinctively clear. Rhythmic phrases or chants may have been used to remember sequences of directions. Songs, as a form of oral tradition, might have encoded complex routes and details. This method of remembering was not universal, but certainly a strong possibility. Could a remembered story, rich in detail and emotion, be more useful than a paper map? The depth of shared human memory offered a profound sense of security and direction. These internal maps were dynamic, continually updated with each new journey and experience. Their minds became living archives, holding the accumulated wisdom of generations. Navigation was rarely a solitary endeavor, it was a shared problem, a group effort. Experienced travelers, with their vast mental maps, naturally took on leadership roles. Scouts might range ahead, checking the immediate terrain for dangers or clearer paths. Others might watch the rear, ensuring no one was left behind or lost track. Children were taught from a young age to stay close, learning by observation and instruction. Waiting at recognizable meeting points ensured the group stayed together in uncertain areas. Temporary trail signs, like broken branches or piled stones, might mark a path. Comparing different observations, one seeing the river, another the ridge, was crucial. One person might confidently remember a specific river's winding path ahead. Another might instantly recognize the distinct silhouette of a distant, familiar ridge. A third person might sense an approaching weather change, guiding their pace and route. These varied observations, when pooled, built a far more robust, collective map. The group's combined knowledge and experience often surpassed that of any single traveler. This collective wisdom provided resilience, ensuring survival in challenging environments. Archaeologists study prehistoric navigation indirectly through various traces left behind. Repeated camp occupations at specific sites suggest knowledge of good resting points. Distant stone materials, found far from their geological source, prove long-distance movement. Evidence of river crossings, like artifacts on both banks, points to habitual passages. Coastal archaeological sites often show patterns of movement along the shoreline. Seasonal occupation of different resource areas highlights migratory or cyclical travel. Paths between resource areas offer tantalizing hints, but not exact route reconstructions. Footprints preserve a single moment, they don't reconstruct an entire navigation system. Back in the blizzard, the traveler assesses the wind, the subtle valley slope, and the river. He considers the frozen river's flow and a remembered, split rock formation. Suddenly, the clouds briefly part, revealing the unmistakable silhouette of that split rock. Guided by this ancient signal, the group reaches a temporary shelter before darkness descends. Prehistoric navigation was not a single, perfect instinct, but a complex tapestry of skills. It was observation, deep memory, repeated travel, shared knowledge, and constant correction. Ice Age humans did not carry maps in their hands, they carried landscapes inside their minds. Which clue would you trust most? The sun, a river, animal tracks, or an elder? Like, share, subscribe to Glacial.